How is everybody doing? We're going to take a look at Mike Oldfield classic album selection 1973 to 1980. This is a really cool little box set that was released back in 2012. I bought it from Amazon. I think I paid £12 for it, which is absolute insanity. It means that each of the albums were £2. So let's check it out. On the back of the hard card shell we have the layout of the albums: Tubular Bells, Hergest Ridge, Ommadawn, Incantations, Platinum, QE2. Each album has got some bonus tracks. There was an extensive remastering campaign done on Mike's Virgin catalogue from the 70s, around this time, and there was a lot of bonus tracks and remixes on the deluxe editions. Side on, we can see the spines of each individual album. So the first one is Tubular Bells. This was originally released in 1973. This was Mike's very first album for Virgin, and it was in fact Virgin's very first release on this new label. Each sleeve is a gatefold as well, just artwork. Part 1 and Part 2, and then we have Mike Oldfield's single, theme from Tubular Bells, and Sailor's Hornpipe, Viv Stanchel version. This was the version that was tacked onto the remix of Tubular Bells from the Boxed album that was released in 1976. The Boxed album was remixed for quadraphonic, which was a type of a 4-speaker setup back then when you had to use a decoder. I've never even seen one. As far as I know, the version here is the 2009 remix, because I have the deluxe edition, judging by the times. So it's a 2009 remix. I think they've used that on subsequent editions. It's a pity if you like the original version, well then the 2009 remix might annoy you a bit. I always prefer the originals. That's just me. It's, yeah, I mean, it's nice. I mean, very nice indeed. Next up is Hergest Ridge. This was originally released in 1974. It was released again as part of Boxed in 1976 in quadraphonic sound. It was remixed. The remix from Box was used for subsequent editions of the album when it was being released, and also the CD editions, I think in the 80s. I bought my CD version of it back in 1991, and it is quite different. This is the 2010 remix by Mike himself. He managed to shave about 2 minutes off Part 1, and Part 2 is more or less the same. And then we have In Dulce Jubilo for Maureen, slightly different version of it, and then Spanish tune. So there's bonus tracks on this as well. The original 1974 mix was reissued as part of the deluxe edition 2010, and I find it much more lively, especially in the first half. And on Part 2, the guitars, the 100 guitars I call them, sound less aggressive. Yeah, so yeah, he also put a new cover on this, The original cover was this one here. Looks pretty poxy really in comparison. But yeah, that's it, Hergest Ridge. Again, 2009, remixed by Mike himself. It's a pity that he didn't stick to the original, but you know, that's just the way it goes. Next up is Ommadawn. This was released in 1975. Again, it was remixed for Boxed in 1976. This version here is the 2010 remixed by Mike, judging by the track timings matching the deluxe edition. The deluxe edition also includes the original 1975 mix. There's subtle differences. Like I said, I still prefer the original mixes. Extra tracks here in Dulce Jubilo. The First Excursion, Argiers, Portsmouth. 1, 2, 3. Those 4 tracks all appeared on Collaborations, which was in Boxed. It was released again in 2016 in its own right as an 8-track LP. I think the first 3 Mike Oldfield albums are kind of a trilogy. Tubular Bells being the most detailed, Hergest Ridge being the more pastoral orchestrated one, and Ommadawn more Celtic, a little bit more, with a little bit of African drums in there as well. So it's a kind of a, yeah, I would say, you know, they're all recorded in the first 3 years of his career. So they're pretty essential really, and definitely some of his strongest work. Next up is Incantations. This was released in 1978. This is a departure from the first 3 albums, although the African style drums are still here. But there's more strings and more choral work on it. This one also gets a new cover. The original cover was pretty of its time. Mike standing on a beach, probably in here. Yeah, there you go. I presume it's the same place. I'm not 100%. I don't know. With this one, we have part 1 to 4, and the bonus track here is Guilty. It's the single mix. This was released in 1979. There is a 12-inch version as well, and it has a kind of a sequenced sub bass on it, and it's much longer. Incantations is a good album. It's hypnotic, a little bit too long I would say, but there's some beautiful parts on it. I like the Hiawatha part where Maddie Pryor sings some of the lyrics to a Longfellow poem. It's one of my favourite pieces. Mike's guitar here as well as Sterling. It's just burning Gibson tone. Really, really nice. So yeah, this one is more or less remastered, but there isn't any remixing done on it as far as I can gather. Platinum. This was released in 1979. There was a live album. Came out a few months before this called Exposed. That is the European tour from the spring of 79. That album is now out of print on compact disc. It was reissued on vinyl back in 2016 as far as I know. There's plenty of vinyl copies around, even old ones. It's getting hard to find on CD and getting very expensive. I had a fat box version and I sold it like a clown. I'll have to get it back, I'd say. Platinum is much lighter than anything Mike had done up to this time. Platinum part 1 to 4 I think are some of his finest work. Great guitar work, great ensemble playing. This was recorded in England and New York, so there's a lot of session players on this. I think Wood Hinge is a bit ambient, and I don't think it really suits this album. I think that comes from the mid-70s as far as I know. I think Guilty, the actual single version, should have been here. Into Wonderland is absolutely appalling. The original title for this track I think was Sally, and there's a different version using the same beat, and it has guitar motifs from Platinum Airborne, but it is it's a stinker, you know, an absolute stinker. And it's a pity it's on this album. There must have been something else that could have went on there, you know. Punkadiddle, I like that. That's a great track. It's kind of a punk rocker, punkadiddle, kind of mixing punk with a bit of diddly idle, I suppose. And then I Got Rhythm. That is a Gershwin track, and it's sung here by Wendy Roberts. Mike actually played that live as well around that time. Yeah. Track 9 here is a bonus live studio session. There's some nice bits here. I think it's Platinum Part 2. And then we have North Star 2012 remix, Nothing to Write Home About here really. And then Blue Peter, that was a single in 1979. So that ties in everything here nicely. This is what the inner sleeve of the original LP looked like. By the way as well, these are not vinyl miniatures because they're actually slightly rectangular, they're not square. So yeah, they're an odd shape. So I wouldn't class them as miniature vinyl. There you go, that's the disc. Discs are kind of boring, but I guess, you know, at least they're different colours. So there you go, that's Platinum, Mike's disco album. And finally, QE2. This is from 1980. I think this is one of Mike's poorest efforts. It's definitely the poorest album here. I used to like it, you know, 30 years ago, but I just find it now, when I'm listening to it, I get bored really quickly, especially Taurus. It used to be called Taurus, now it's called Taurus 1, which is a bit strange. Taurus kind of meanders a little bit in the middle, and it's almost like he's looking for lost chords and stuff. Yeah, I think it's... Live versions are much better. Taurus became Taurus 2, and that was one of the highlights of the early 80s when it appeared on 5 Miles Out. Sheba, that's not bad. It sounds a little bit like ABBA or something like that. And then you've got Conflict. Phil Collins plays drums on some of these tracks. Arrival, that's an ABBA cover from their own 1976 album Arrival. Wonderful Land, that's a cover of a Shadows song. Again, that's pretty good. Mirage, that doesn't really go anywhere. And then you've got QE2 and QE2 Finale. They're broken up on this now, which is a bit strange as well. It's got a brass on that and stuff as well. It's not bad. It's, you know, it's not bad, but it's still, there's nothing. It's nothing like anything from Platinum even, you know. Obviously it's better than Into Wonderland, one of his worst songs ever. Celt, it's just again more bombast with kind of bodhráns and big drums. And Molly's just a little guitar motif with a little synthesizer in the background. I think that was for his daughter. Then we have Polka, that's a live cut. It's just a kind of a hoedown really. And then Wonderful Land, the single version, and Shiva. Shiva is actually Sheba, and Mike is singing on it, and it sounds absolutely horrible. I know I hate saying it, like, but I'm just being honest. I just cringe. He's kind of muttering, and it sounds even out of tune where he's singing on it. Just sounds awful. I love the artwork in this. It gives you the names of the tracks pointing to parts of the ship, which I really like. So it's just completely superficial. Yeah, who's on this Taurus? Phil Collins, Mike Fry. Yeah, that's part of the European band. Mike plays a lot himself. David Henschel actually produced this album, and I find that it's a very dry sounding album, and you have to really search for bass on it because the bass is very dry. It lacks serious bottom end. I don't know what they were thinking. Even on the remaster, even on the vinyl, it just sounds... It just lacks bottom end. It's a very dry sounding album. there you have it. That's my Oldfield classic album selection. And I'm glad I bought this, because recently I was looking and it's after getting very, very expensive. And like, I didn't need it at the time. I think I was after buying the deluxe editions, or maybe I hadn't bought them. But at the same time, for €12, I mean, that's the price of, I don't think you get a McDonald's for two, not that you'd want it, for £12. So this is fantastic value for money. And like I said again, nice to have it. Each album in its own sleeve and stuff like that. So yeah, as you can tell, you know, there's already two new photographs on the covers of those albums, and yeah, it does improve them. There's no way around that. You know, makes it look a bit more modern. Yeah, it's nice. And I always felt it was hard to read Hergest Ridge against the blue background with the yellow. The same way Tubular Bells is quite hard to read. But other than that, it's a great box set. If you ever get your hands on it, try and get it. But you know, like I said, it's definitely a collector's item, and it's one I love to have in my collection. So, thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe and take care.